den. Já bych vás rád jménem Galerie Architektury přivítal na přednášce, která probíhá v rámci hodin pana profesora Šlapety a je mou ctí tady přivítat pana architekta Rafiho Segala, který je architekt americko-izraelského původu a je v Brně díky tomu, že v rámci festivalu Architektura, který pořádá Ostravský kabinet architektury, můžeme mít výstavu jeho prací. A nejen prací, ale je jedním z architektů, který pracuje konceptuálně, takže můžete vidět na té výstavě, která bude dneska zahájena v 6 hodin a na kterou jste srdečně zváni. Jeho způsob práce a přemýšlení od prvních skic do posledních detailů a realizovaných prací. Pan architekt rovněž zde v České republice, protože pracoval jako hlavní kurátor na výstavě o životě a díle architekta Alfreda Neumanna, který rovněž působil v Brně, a nejen v Brně, ale pak i dále. A tato výstava bude zítra otevřena v Ostravské galerii výtvarného umění, kde bude oficiálně zahájen festival Architektura 2015. A kromě výstavy o Alfredu Neumannovi tam budou i jiné zajímavé výstavy a myslím si, že pokud máte zájem o architekturu, je důležité v Ostravě být. A nyní bych rád poprosil pana profesora Šlapetu, jestli by mohl uvést
Dámy a pánové, ta přednáška měla být původně pro první ročník, že? Ale už tady jsou i z jiných ročníků možná někteří. Kdo je z jiných ročníků než z prvního? Já jsem vám poslal takový dopis, kde jsem vás asi před 14 dny informoval, že bude vernisáž výstavy Alfreda Neumana v Ostravě, že by se tam mohlo jít autobusem. Děkuji za velký zájem, přihlásila se jedna studentka, to ukazuje na zájem studentů, kteří mají hlavně zájem o nošení rakví po městě, jako a méně o skutečný obsah architektury, čili obzvláště těm studentům, kteří ty rakve nosí, velmi děkuju za atmosféru, která na této škole panuje. Můžete si to, pane Prajnigrej, napsat a citovat, kdekoliv budete si přát. Protože školy mají trošku jiný význam. Tady čtu zase plakát, na kterém je napsáno, že se vlastně studenti nejvíc naučí od spolužáků. To je pravda. Je otázka, jestli se naučí to nejdůležitější. My, když jsme chodili do školy, tak jsme přece jenom s jistým respektem hleděli k těm starším, aby jsme se něco dozvěděli, aby jsme měli ještě nějaký vztah k věcem, které minuly a které možná mají i význam pro budoucnost. A Rafi Segal patří do té rodiny architektů, kteří skutečně také dokázali naslouchat a chodili na dobrou školu, kde studenti nenosili rakve, nýbrž občas poslouchali, co jim ti profesoři vykládají. Jedním z těch profesorů v dávné době byl Alfred Neumann a jeho žákem byl Zvi Heckerem. Někdy v druhé polovině 90. let mi Zvi Heckerem říkal, poslechni, já teďka mám jednoho šikovného studenta a ten se teďka Alfredu Neumannovi věnuje. To byl první signál někdy v 90. letech, protože my jsme už se snažili otázku Alfreda Neumana jak si otevřít a vrátit ho do naší architektonické diskuse. A Rafi v té věci udělal zcela zásadní kroky svou dizertací na Princeton univerzity. Rafi měl výstavu v Ostravě na podzim loňského roku. Zítra tam bude zahájen ten architektonický festival, bude následovat výstava Zvi Heckera a také výstava Alfreda Neumana, která bude zahájena právě zítra. A tím pádem, protože Rafi je poprvé v Brně, tak ho vítám do rodiny brněnské architektonické tradice, protože Alfred Neumann vyrostl v Brně, vystudoval ve Vídni, pracoval u Pereta v Paříži a u Berence v Berlíně, prošel křtem mladého architekta v Paříži, v Alžíru, v Kapském městě, vrátil se v roce 1936 do Brna, přátelil se s malířem Františkem Foltýnem a úzce spolupracoval s českou skupinou Siam, zejména těsně po válce, když přežil holokaust a Terezín a byl členem skupiny, která prezentovala český urbanistický přínos na prvním poválečném kongresu Siam v Bridgewateru a potom s pomocí svých přátel odešel do Izraele a stal se děkanem Technionu, školy, kde se nenosí rakve, ale se studenti opravdu učí na plný pecky, což bych si přál, aby se jednou, pane Preiningere, taky stalo v Brně. Doufám, že aspoň v příštích, za mého života se to jistě nestane, ale možná v příštích životech to bude lepší, protože oni se ty věci trošku cirkulují. Čili ještě jednou vítám Rafiho, který mezi tím nejenom, že dizertoval o Alfredu Neumannovi, ale spolupracoval na významných stavbách Zvi Heckera a vyhrál soutěž na Národní knihovnu v Izraeli vedle Knesetu ve velmi významné poloze v centru Jeruzaléma. A myslím, že ten jeho koncept, který je na jedné straně racionální a na druhé straně poetický, že má stále co říct a že je důležité, abyste ho dneska slyšeli, abyste přišli na tu výstavu a abyste eventuálně zajeli do Ostravy, abyste viděli i výstavu, odkud pochází kořeny té rodiny, kam patří i Rafi, to znamená Alfred Neumann, Zvi Heckerem, Rafi Segal. Welcome to Brno, floor is yours.
Thank you, Vladimir.
I did a massage for our students.
Yeah.
We don't know what to learn yet. What to learn.
No, I'm sure. You know, we thank you, Gabriel, for this. We don't really know as architects, you know. I think it's a profession where we need to be very good at working without knowing, you know. We have a program, we know how it's going to come together. We start building, we don't know how to design. We have a client, we have no idea what the client is expecting. We work on a project, we don't know if it will be built. Who knows? We do a competition, we win, we don't know if it will be built. So it's really one of a very special profession that we need to work without knowing. No, but it's our talent, our capability as architects to continue being productive without knowing what we need to know, without knowing the outcome. We start a design, we don't know where it will end, how it will develop. So I think it's one of the talents that we gain, or we practice the art or the act of working and producing without knowing. And it's very difficult because society expects us to know, or at least to have the knowledge of some kind of understanding of what we need to supply. But that's in the context of, of knowing. I will talk today about some projects that I've been working on, which most of them are in the gallery tonight, so you're welcome to see it live. The size of the sketches, exactly, the size of the line. And it's true, it's my first time in Brno, although I have to say I was reading a lot about Brno from my work on Neumann, which maybe I show not so much today, but that's in the Ostrava exhibition that you can see. I'm sorry, my Czech is not so good. I will speak in English very slowly. But I have like so many drawings, so whenever I have a problem, I show you some drawings. I think architecture, for me, is about observation. It's about looking, and it's about, through observation and through a project, you challenge the way we understand the world. It's absolutely about that. I think it's today not about stabilizing knowledge necessarily, but it's about challenging conventions, challenging certain ideas. That's why I like to talk about concepts and forms, and the relation between a concept and a form. Now, the observation... It's
just one picture.
One picture, okay. In the middle like this,
Maybe after your lecture.
Maybe after you take a picture? Okay. All right. So usually this observation starts with a line, because the line is very convenient. It's flat. It has no thickness, no depth, and you could just kind of use it to interpret different things. You can use it to read in it different things. And it's about observing. Yes, it's a constant practice of drawing and sketching. And I use it very often if it's a real project or if it's something else. It's a kind of way to communicate with myself, but also it's a way to better kind of understand an idea. So I ask one question when I do a project. Because I'm not so interested in a building like as an object, like as a design. I ask what can the site of the project do to the building, and what can the building do to the site. And I'm going to tell you a few stories about projects that I'm doing and show you what I mean. Now, there is a kind of difficulty in this, because in order to access this idea, one needs to really, as an architect, engage in the form, in developing the form, the design. And it is a process. And when I explain it, it's a process. It's very difficult to understand that, because it's something very personal. Okay? So I'm going to try to share a little bit of the process with you and maybe explain what I mean. So this is in Uganda, in Africa. And we were doing a project for the UN here. And what is interesting about this place is, if you notice, there is like cell phone, antenna, but there is no road, right? It's like there is no hard infrastructure, but there is this. And there's everything else, this kind of space which is moving and in, out. It's all in the flow of space. And this is a site, and we were asked by an organization who deals with refugees from the conflicts in North Uganda to make a museum. We'll make a museum for this organization, for people who are a result of the conflicts and of the wars in Uganda. And they had a building like this that the US government gave them. And inside it was like, so they want a museum for peace. This is the program. Inside it says keep out, no honking, no hanging around, yes? And this is the building they get. And they asked for us to make an addition to this building. But when I was looking around at the site, I saw this is empty, and I saw this is empty. So there is space. And this is the building we got. So here, I said maybe we don't build an addition to this building and turn this building into a museum, or into a museum for peace. What does that mean? Maybe we do something else. So this is the building we got. And there are only very few places where you can actually get a building and say, maybe I don't want to use that building for the project. So this is empty. This is a teacher's room. So you say, maybe instead of making the project here, we make the project here. Right? And then use this building as a space and this. So it's a kind of place where you exhibit artifacts from different customs and of the tribes of these people who are really families torn apart by the conflicts. It's a long history of war and conflict in northern Uganda. Yeah. So the first, so they said money was given by UN. The client was a non-profit. They said, yeah, sure. They talked to the city. This place is called Titul. They said, okay, we can use this. Yes. So we made the first model. It looked like this, very simple. So this was the building. We connect to the building, and here we have a library, and here we have the museum, like that, open. And they were saying good, but I was looking at it, and I said, yes, but there's no space. It's just a corridor, and you have to. Just a corridor is not enough. So we started looking at making bigger spaces along that path. So first, the idea that instead of a single space, the project is a path, is a way to connect the buildings and make a place. Because here, it becomes a memorial. So we started with sketches. How do you connect? How do you make galleries and a path together? And, it's nothing new because we always do something we already did, of course. So I did this project like 15 years ago, 10 years ago in Israel. It's a museum. This was the existing envelope, and we put in galleries. It's in Ashdod. It's a port city. So we imagine like galleries falling into the building and stacking up, and something that it looks like this with the different galleries. And so it was also this project of inside the gallery, outside, and moving between these kind of boxes around the space. A very simple idea for an exhibition. But this idea of the gallery as a unit kind of found its way back right into this project in Africa. We're here and here. But now there is a whole process of, when it's not inside the building, there is a desire to keep that single expression of a single form. And looking at the side here and seeing that there are so many passages that cross through the side. So in fact, we made some areas bigger, some kind of rooms maybe, but also we allow the passage. So in fact, this is the plan of the museum, and it is completely open, and then it relates to these exterior spaces. And it stays open because the weather in Uganda, I don't know if you're familiar, but it's pretty good. It's not like we have here in the past few days, crazy snow, sun. So it's basically 21 degrees all the time. And then sometime you have a little bit rain, sometimes you have no rain, but 21. So basically you can live outside with very little clothes, right? So if you go to this part of Africa, you see what is public space. Public space is a tree, some shade, yeah? Everything is outside, right? Watching TV outside, a big political discussion, school is outside, like camp is outside. Even when the president, Mr. Fabi goes outside. No, this is the African science. No, it's very interesting. But look, it's not only outside. It's more sophisticated because, look, he is under a tree. He has an umbrella. And look, even this is covered. So it's about different degrees of open space. It's a different degrees of spaces. It's not just... So I think in this museum, we keep it open. We have a roof, but we keep it open. So the model is like this. So this is a memorial garden. This becomes not a museum, a center for peace, and it becomes a place where these different tribes, which families were split and left over, can come here and do activities, do dance, do festivals. And the building here has a library inside and an archive. So the plan is very simple. Only these are walls, ramps, and here it connects to the building. And here you can use that for courtyard, for events, and you have gardens around. And it looks like this in the model. And this is very recent. And what it does on the overall area, it makes a center, it makes a place. Because it connects these buildings and makes some kind of center point. And they started working on a rainy day, and now we have the floor, half of the building, because we only have floor and roof. So we have floor, we have places for the columns. When the rain will stop, they will start again with the roof. But I actually like it like this also, it's nothing in the end. If we can do something with nothing, it's also, I think, valuable. But this idea of movement will kind of very easily, I can talk about the next project with this idea. And this is a house in Inner Mongolia, China. And it's part of this place they called Ordus a few years ago. There was a big organization to invite different architects from around the world, each one to do a house in this place. And what is interesting, Ordus is along Inner Mongolia, is just on the southern edge of the Gobi Desert. We're kind of moving geographies here very quickly, but it's what the Chinese are now working, calling the Big Green Wall, which is an attempt to stop the desert. The Gobi Desert is expanding to the south, and they want to use green and cities to stop the desert. And one of these cities is Ordus, and this is the site. And so they may commission the big 100-villa project, which is really more a media project. And I got this plot here. So this is a museum, this is artist residence, and this is the villa I got. And the critique or the comment I understood, I looked at the site and I said again, what can the site do to the building, and what can the building do to the site? And I wanted to avoid the condition of a wall that surrounds the neighborhood, yes? Here you can see architects, each one with this plot. And this is the regulations we got. You know this. Anyone who will, do a house, you get a lot, you get setback lines, right? You say you're supposed to put the building here in the middle or here, and then you have space around. So the building is an object, space around it. So we said maybe we change this idea. Instead of that, we put, instead of building in the middle and green around, we have the open space in the middle and the building around it. And this is how the sketches started to develop this idea of the building as a kind of lot, as a site, as a platform, and the open space in the middle. And that open space is a space where you could pass through, which connects to that open space. And you see here the model. So basically this would be an open space, and you can actually walk through the building. So the house is here connected and underground connected, and these become courtyards. So the actual experience of the house is from the inside, but it's outside. And it's all dependent on this kind of movement, from both directions. And maybe it's a kind of carving. You build an object in order to carve into it, right? And this idea of carving, you can see other work I did for a master plan here. This is on the Mediterranean near Tel Aviv in Israel. I did a master plan to carve spaces through the limestone and to have programs within those carved spaces. So an idea that comes from that notion, This is not my project, unfortunately. But carving architecture, carving space, not building space. I think it's very, very powerful in order to understand what we can work with. Yeah. So maybe a little bit this idea to cut out the space from within, and to make the center, the courtyard, really the living heart of the building. This idea of the courtyard is very much coming from work I did with Zvi Heckerem on this project in Tel Aviv. It's a museum. It's a military museum for an underground organization that existed before the establishment of the state. It's called Palmachu History Museum. And it took a site where there were trees like this on the site. It was on an edge of an army base. And it said, well, let's keep these trees and build a building around it. Right? So we dug around. So here it's earth all the way down. We just dig around, hold the earth in place, connect it. You see there is like a belt here, like you put a belt on your pants. You put the belt around that. And then we build the building around it, so the inside stays a natural courtyard. And so the building organizes itself around it, and you have stairs in circulation going from the inside into the perimeter. And in the overall neighborhood, it works. It interacts, you see, so the green can kind of go in and out. So a series of walls. So again, the interaction between the site and building it's a dialogue, it's a conversation. I think this is something that all my work, and maybe something I picked up, of course, from Heckerem and from Neumann in a way, the balance between the figure and the ground. Even though we are dealing with an object, like even this condition where the building can be identified as its own object, but at the same time is completely integrated into its context. That's really the challenge, one idea. Second idea, can we work with a unit, with a repetitive unit, to create space? And is that unit set in a certain scale that relates to the body, like in the work of Neumann and Heckerem? But this kind of, balance of the figure ground, of the mass void, yes, of the cut, of the addition. This is something where I'm trying to work with consistently in different projects to maintain that and through that condition to allow one to experience something from within the building which does not exist in the building itself. It's not what is inside the space. Even today, we went to Tugendhat. And what's incredible about the villa is you see the city differently after you go inside, you see. You understand the view outside is the same. But from the inside, you understand where you are in a different way. I think that's... You understand the world in a different way. That's really what our goal is. So going back to this, yeah? So the idea here, through this courtyard, through the same villa, each of these becomes a program in the project, and a program around which the other programs organize themselves. So let me explain how the house works. So on the ground level, you can open this, and you can walk from the street to the outside, and you have half here, and you have stairs on both sides. And so, on the top level, it connects, so the bedrooms connect, and sometimes you have space. And on the lower level, it also connects, right? So it's kind of like a bagel, yeah? Like this, and you can walk through it like that. So even if the door is open, it can be public, but you can walk around. And so it makes a good section, interesting kind of section to work with. But the other idea, which I think is something that became important, is the idea of the continuous space of the roof. where this kind of notion of a continuous roof that connects everything together. This is a very modernist idea. This is the house I live in America. It's by Marcel Breuer. This idea of the single roof, the single space that connects all the smaller spaces, something bigger than the house itself, yeah? And this kind of double height. So in a way, I bring this to show, one cannot escape one's own habits of form also. Form for us is a kind of struggle in a way. I don't want to say fight it, but we really work hard in order to get rid of certain habits we have. And the best, I would say the most efficient understandings come by accident, like always in any creative process, yeah? So when I make a building, a model for this building, it's from cardboard. And I think if I had a teacher, they would say, oh, it's not good because it's cardboard. What is it made of? And I say, I don't know. I don't know. It was like so long, I had no idea how this building is made. What's making? So I make a bigger model. Now I thought, okay, if I'm in school, if I tell students, what's it made of, maybe if it's a bigger model, I will have a better idea. But now, completely. Then I made a smaller model. I didn't make a model. The machine makes a model. This is a model from a printer. It's very small. It's like this. But when you go closer, you see, so there is a texture. And I looked at this and I said, interesting. It's too small, but I like this direction because it's a direction that, the machine gave. But then I look at my sketches and I say, I do this all the time. No. It's not. And then I say, look, we have this is, of course. This is a hat. You see, mass really is never dark. It's never black. There's always white in between. There's always space. Whatever, like in a microscope, you look, there is always, in every material, there is always space. It's just a question of where you decide to look. But there's always there is space. I think that's really exactly what I've been doing. I just need to build my sketch. Perfect. If I say that to a teacher of mine, it was a big catastrophe, yeah? But, so lines, you have to know what to do with the lines. So sometimes they're open, sometimes they're closed, and so it becomes an idea. Sometimes air, sometimes light, sometimes earth, sometimes plants. So the roof becomes like a garden. Like you plow a chorus. And this is what we get. Very simple. Even if you don't plant, just dirt will grow stuff, it's just by itself. But it's something that was here all the time. These steps. It's not anything unusual, these steps. Like, this is in Jerusalem. Steps. This is a library. We did steps. So the roof is like a series of steps. The roof is a ground. There's a new ground. There's another ground. Now, it's why we have an opportunity to make a building in such a spectacular site. This is the Israeli Parliament. This is the Supreme Court. This is the Israel Museum, the city of Jerusalem. And why we make no building, really. We just make steps. I think we have to blame this guy. He says the book will kill the building. Victor Hugo. You know this saying. Why? Why does he say the book will kill the building? He said it a long time ago, but he was right. Because once, we had a building where everything was embedded into the architecture. Architecture had meaning, yes? It's not only that in order to build like a cathedral or an important building, you had to know so much. You had to combine engineering, technology, tradition, right? So first, it's an expression of the knowledge, the tradition we had. But second, literally, the book is the building. The story is in the architecture, embedded in it. All the stories of whatever are all inside the architecture. It's integrated into it. This is why they say architecture, the mother of all arts. But it's no longer. But it's very difficult for us to lose kind of these ideas. We don't want to give that up. And when the building of a library began to develop later in the 18th century, in the Enlightenment, they understood it as a kind of a container of knowledge. That this knowledge, okay, it's not embedded in the actual stone, but it's contained in a building. So architecture here is a container of knowledge, of books, right? And it's a container, and like Notre Dame is guarded by creatures, also the library is guarded by creatures. It's guarding it. So this is in New York. And inside, it's the new cathedral. Right? You look up, you have the sky. So it's a new... But this model has been existing for so long, and we still need to question when we do this competition for the library in Jerusalem. You know, we need to question what is a library in the 21st century, right? Today, where is information today? It's not in the book. It's in a cloud. It's invisible. No, we don't. It's not. We don't need. We don't need to store the books themselves. So knowledge today is really not kept in a container, but it is a field. We can access it at any point. It's an endless field, right? It's an endless space. It made me think of this tablets, right? So you agree that these are different tablets. This is 4,000 years of difference, yeah? They are different because this has the information on it. This is a kind of portal. But more important, not why they're different. More important is how are they similar, these tablets. And they are extremely similar, first in their form. This is almost the same size, you know. They're very similar in the form. And, well, because maybe we haven't changed so much in 5,000 years. So this is very telling. And also they are both carrying information. They are not really carrying knowledge. But this realization that after 4,000 years we go back to basically the same form that contains information is a very interesting idea. When we looked at the site, just let's keep that idea for a minute. The existing library that they had was here in the campus, and it was a container, a modern container, but an object that contains the book. The new site is here. And if we look at that site in the context of Jerusalem, the old city, the 19th century city, the 20th century city, we can begin to understand that it's not only the idea of the library change, but also the idea of how we operate in I would say, a more dispersed site, not a traditional urban site. So you have the old city, that's outside the walls, the 19th century city, 20th century city. But more than that, it becomes more complicated because this is Jerusalem, and you see all these colors. It's all different claims between Palestinian territory, Israeli territory, army camps, controlled areas, occupied areas. There's a whole politics that comes with this, which is it's a lecture in itself. but extremely complicated. So you have urbanism and architecture as weapons that change the landscape and fight against each other. You have Palestinian kind of villages and towns which organically occupy the side of the mountain, never the mountaintop. And you have the Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank which take control over the hills. And this is how construction happens, right? You take a hill, you cut it, you build buildings on it. This has been going on for many years, but in addition now to that complication, we have this line, which is a wall. It's not a wall between countries. It's a wall that is intended to cut up the blues, which are Israeli control, from the browns, which are Palestinian control. And this is what it does to the landscape. Right? Now, why is this important? Because this is Jerusalem today. It's all about that wall, that barrier, that disconnect, separation, segregation. One here, one there. They don't meet. And it's cutting in the middle of city. It's cutting everywhere. So when we get this site, I said this has to be all about the horizontal. This is the idea. It cannot be, this project cannot create any kind of wall. It has to create a field. It has to create a series of open spaces, which are here, and access to that, and also the roof. So there's two movements. The ground separates into two. Public can go in here, public can go up here, but it's all about horizontal movement. And this is a very beautiful building from 1960s Israel Museum over there. So and it happens in the sections. So ground, you go into the building, and then you can go down into the reading hall, and then you can go up again and out. Or from here you can go up, from inside the building, from a courtyard, and onto the roof. And it starts with a very simple model like this. Just ground, just surface. Yep. And then it develops into a series of steps which create that condition and that urban condition between it and the museum in a bigger model. And you can see it from here. And it kind of echoes a landscape of terraces which is built, but it also tries to capture this kind of carving out, which is also in Jerusalem, this kind of carved out space. So at the same time, maybe a balance between the building, the stacking of lines, of a multiple condition of stacks, and then also the carving out of space. Yeah. And what happens in this state is this condition of the vertical, which, we're talking about Jerusalem, which is really this kind of destination. I mean, it's not on your way to anything, Jerusalem, right? It's kind of your end point. Once you get to Jerusalem, either you die or you go to heaven. You don't go anywhere else. And this is kind of embedded into the psychic of Jewish people, but of Christians, of all religions. They're kind of the vertical axis. And we have it also in a contemporary, what James Turrell calls a sky room, which shows that is in Israel, in the Jewish Museum and Israeli Museum in Jerusalem. And we also have it traditionally from what we call the mikveh, is a space that you bathe as a part of a religious ceremony. But this idea of above and under at the same time, which is in a city like Jerusalem, of this condition of inside, reading room, and above at the same time. Structurally, what we do is the roof is held independently by what you see in red. And so it just creates a shelter, and the blue is for the material, for books, people, some cars. So the heavy is for light, and the simple, generic model is for matter. And then a series of spaces. As you go deeper into, it becomes a bit less public, but they're all publicly accessible. We can skip this. I have a series of plans, but we can go quicker. through them of how it works. All basically one plan with different levels. So what is interesting here is that as you move deeper into the space, it kind of opens up and it changes. And so the same unit repeats itself. So the entrance would look like that. It's lower. Then you go inside, and that's around another open space, and light comes in from the middle. And then you get to the center where you have the reading room. And there you have Kafka there also. And so what began to be interesting in this project is how the section, on the long section, it's a single section that stays the same. But in the other direction, the building completely transforms. So you see the same element, the same kind of square of the courtyard starts like that, then changes, moves. So every time it's a different building within that section. It changes over here, and then in the end, and then it opens up here also. So this got first prize, but it's not going to be built. We won't go into this another big story, but it works with this kind of unit of a courtyard unit that also allows kind of natural ventilation, and the thickness of the roof with the thermal qualities of the stone also kind of has an environmental kind of sustainable role in the building. We have time for one more project. Gabriel. Yeah? Yes. Okay, so I think just to follow up on a few ideas that I tried to talk about, I'll show you one more. Yeah? No, but... okay. Yeah? Yeah? Now?
Yes.
I'm not done yet.
I know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Pause. Yeah?
I'm sorry.
No, it's... Okay. So this is another competition I just did that like every second architect did for the Guggenheim in Helsinki. I'm sure you heard of this, a most popular competition in the history. Yeah. People did it here in Czech? You don't know, right? Anyone worked on this competition here? No? Good, you are smart. So I think it takes maybe a few ideas and also shows how the same ideas that you saw in the other projects are also in here, but differently. And one idea that the building occupies that area, but again it changes in section. So when it's close to the city and the water, it does that. And as it moves, it changes and interacts with the park, because we have a big park here, and the city of Helsinki is here, and this is one of the southern harbors. And the site is in between the water, the city, and the park. But the park is elevated, you see. So the challenge for me was, how do you make a building that can connect the park to the water? And if we look at the site, which is here, you see the park is elevated, and the city. And there are very important monuments. So Guggenheim wants to do a building here, a museum. They're in the process now of this competition. And they said in the brief that they want to contribute to the city. So I took that very seriously, this idea, in the project. I said, okay, how do you make a building and you contribute to the city? So one idea is, can you read the city from the building differently? And can you use the building as a passage from the park to the harbor? And this was the main idea that drove the design. kind of to find a way to carve that space out between the harbor walk and the park. And again, the section is helpful. You have this movement that is outside and open all the time to everyone. And underneath that, the building is connected underneath that movement. So the spaces are connected under, but that stays open. And this is, and then it's, simple. This is a beautiful alto building. It's simple stone and creates this kind of gallery space. So everything else became secondary to that idea. Entrance, and then gallery. And so from the water, kind of moves towards the water. And I think we can end here with this. Thank you for your time.